Adjunct Professor Moran, Macroeconomics 111. In this session, we're going to review how we go from one equilibrium to another equilibrium. In economics, no matter whether it's macro or micro or what topic, you don't move from one equilibrium directly or scooch along the line to another equilibrium. There's always an equilibrium, a line shifts, there's a disequilibrium, and then human nature, market forces take over, and you move to a new equilibrium along the new shifted line. So what causes a shift in aggregate expenditures in the first place? As we studied in a prior session, we're studying the private, closed, Keynesian model. This means that there's no government, it's closed, and there's no imports and exports. So our only two variables are consumption and business spending. We derived consumption by saying that disposable income was the primary explainer, and we know the consumption is less than the slope of the consumption line is less than the slope of a 45-degree reference line, because you don't spend every dollar you earn. That would give you a slope of 1. The slope is less than 1 because disposable income is consumed and saved. Savings is a leakage from the expense stream. That will give us, if this goes over $1, this will go up by less than $1. All right, now what causes this line to shift? So at any one level of income, people are consuming more, or conversely, if the line shifts down, they're consuming less. And an easy way to remember that is the acronym WHITE. Wealth, indebtedness, taxes, expectations. Wealth is your savings, perhaps in the stock market. So if all of a sudden stocks go up, then you don't feel compelled to save as much out of your current income. So at any one level of income, you'll consume more. Consumption being read from this axis. Or indebtedness. If at any one level of income you start borrowing more money, you're going to spend it. Nobody borrows money to save it. And so at any one level of income, indebtedness goes up, consumption rises. Taxes. If taxes fall, then you get to keep more of your income and consumption rises. And then expectations. If you're more cheerful about the future, you'll spend more at any one level of income and save less. Conversely, if wealth falls, if the stock market falls, you'll go from this equilibrium, the line will shift down, and at any one level of income you'll consume less. If indebtedness falls, you'll have less money to buy things with, consumption falls. If taxes rise, then consumption falls at any one level of income. And if you become more gloomy about the economy than at any one level of income, your consumption will fall and you'll save more. That's a shift in consumption. Business spending we explained as an inverse relationship. The demand for new business spending is an inverse relationship between interest rates and business spending. So at high interest rates, business will spend less on new equipment because more projects become unprofitable because of the higher cost of funding the projects with borrowed money. But at lower interest rates, the cost of borrowing is less, so more projects become profitable, so business spending will rise. There's a negative relationship between the demand for new business spending and interest rates. Now, we want to get these on the same graph, so what we did is we just took this and said it was independent of changes in GDP. We just took whatever the current interest rate was, we took this value, maybe 100, and put it on a graph. And so IG was constant. And consumption, we made some powerful assumptions that brought GDP into equality with disposable income. So we have the 45-degree reference line, we add our consumption line, then we add a constant amount to represent business spending, and this is our aggregate expense line. So we don't have to write C and then C plus IG. We're just going to put an aggregate expense line on the graph. So a shift in aggregate expenditures will be caused either by wealth, indebtedness, taxes, expectations, or a change in interest rates. If interest rates go from IR low to IR high, this would be 100 here. Then business spending might fall to 50. And this line would fall to 50 for a decrease. So an increase would be an increase in wealth, indebtedness, tax, reduction in taxes, or more cheerful expectations about the future, or lower interest rates. That would cause this line to shift up. Or the stock market goes down, indebtedness goes down, taxes go up, or expectations become more gloomy about the future, or interest rates go up. And that would cause this to fall, and this to go this way. So now we're ready to study the aggregate expense line and how we actually go from one equilibrium to another equilibrium. So here on this axis we have our aggregate expenditures, that's C plus IG. In the private closed model, soon we're going to add G and XN, and this is gross domestic product. Think of aggregate expenditures as buying, output. It's the expense approach to GDP. You can think of GDP as making, since GDP is output, and you can also think of this as income. Right. Now, the key things to this chart, the takeaways are, you don't go from one equilibrium to another. You go from an equilibrium, a shift, which gives you a disequilibrium, and then a ride in this line back to equilibrium. And we're going to compare whether buying is greater than making or making is greater than buying. And that's determined by which side this of the 45-degree reference line this disequilibrium is. Any number on this side of the 45-degree reference line means that this number, buying, will be larger than making. Any point that's on the downside of the 45-degree reference line, this side will be larger. Making will be greater than buying. Now, when we say making and buying, we're really talking about what's happening to unplanned changes in inventory. So we'll be discussing that as well. In this example, if the stock market goes up, if indebtedness goes up, taxes go down, or expectations become more cheerful, or when we add government, if government spending increases, then this line will shift up. And at any one level of GDP, people will be trying to buy more output. So let's assume that happens. At this level of GDP, we were at an equilibrium here. But now income or making hasn't changed, but for some reason, wealth, indebtedness, taxes, expectations, lower interest rates, the line is shifted up. And at this level of income and output, people now want to buy this amount of output. Buying is greater than making. We're on this side of the 45-degree reference line. Now that means there's going to be an unplanned inventory decrease. Businesses had an inventory of 100. They made and planned to sell 10, but they sold 12. So they had a decrease in inventory. There was an unplanned decrease in inventory of 2. This is really good news for business because that means that they're selling more than they anticipated. And so in the future, they'll ramp up production. So when they ramp up production, they'll be moving along this line this way. That's because they're trying to increase GDP and output. When they do that, unemployment will fall, income will rise. But income isn't spent dollar for dollar, so the increase in spending is not a 45-degree reference line. Since the marginal expense to consume is less than 1, they'll be riding up this new aggregate expense line until they get to this point where buying is equal to making, and that's the new equilibrium. So something causes us to leave something causes this line to shift, which given that amount of output will then give us a disequilibrium, and then you'll have the invisible hand guiding us back to equilibrium. All right, so originally inventory was 100. They planned to make 10. Okay, this is what's going to happen over here. Now, let's say the stock market goes down, indebtedness goes down, taxes go up, or there's gloomier expectations about the future. And this curve shifts down. Now, at this level of GDP, making is greater than buying. We have all 3 measures of GDP on this graph now: making, income, and buying, the expense approach. Now, making is greater than buying. There's an unplanned increase in inventories. Businesses plan to sell, they had existing inventory of 100, they planned to sell 10, so they made another 10, and they only sold 8. So there's an increase in inventory of 2. Inventory is expensive, and unsold inventory is not good for a business. So as a result, business will start producing less. As they produce less, income falls as workers get laid off. But as income falls, spending doesn't fall dollar for dollar, because part of the reduction in income, continued buying will happen. Some of the continued buying will be a withdrawal from savings. So it won't fall on a 45-degree reference line. It'll fall along this aggregate expense line until finally we get to this point where buying is again equal to making, and that's the equilibrium where the economy will stop. An important point to remember in this model is that savings at equilibrium, savings is equal to planned investment. Savings is a leakage from the income stream. You make $1, you can buy $1 of output. That's classical economics. Keynes points out, though, that when you get $1 of income, you'll save part of it, and $1 won't be available to buy the output. So what's going to plug this leakage? And the idea here is that when you save money, businesses will go and borrow it and plug the leak. And so you'll have C plus IG will give you an equilibrium between buying and making. All right. In our next session, we're going to put everything together in one package for review.